What's up, guys? Welcome to our NHL Team Association list. It's a little bit different than what we normally do, but when we're going to go through each NHL team, when we think of their logos, who's the first player that comes to mind, we're going to share our picks with you. So without further ado, let's get started here.
Let's start off with the Anaheim Ducks.
Going to go alphabetical order here.
Sir. This was a tough one because you think Teemu Selanne, even Paul Kariya, but you got to go with their longtime captain. He was on the cup-winning team. I went with Ryan Getzlaf.
Yep, so did I. Again, he's just almost Mr. Duck to me.
Yeah. Arizona.
Yeah.
A very weak history. I mean, the only guy that comes close in competition, they traded to Vancouver in OEL, but it's Shane Doan.
Yeah, for sure. Again,
Easy.
longtime captain, same reasoning. Obviously not the cup as
Yeah.
Getzlaf, but the same reasoning there.
Yep. Honorable mention to Briz, but
Yeah.
yeah, no one else there for me.
Honorable mention to Phil Kessel.
Yeah. If I were to get an Arizona Coyotes jersey, it would be a Phil Kessel jersey. Anyways,
sure.
Boston.
Yeah.
This one was tough because it was between Ray
really?
Bork and Bobby Orr. I went with Bobby Orr.
So did I.
Okay.
Best player. You could make the argument he's the greatest player of all time.
Yep.
That's not named Gretzky.
I think because
I think you
defenseman,
could. I think you could make the argument he's the greatest player of all time.
he's definitely up there. It's
He's
not
He's top three for sure.
Mm-hmm. Buffalo. Shout out Hasek. I think he was the best player to ever play for Buffalo.
Yeah.
But I think of Gilbert Perreault.
Oh, I think of Pat LaFontaine.
Oh, okay.
Again, two
Yeah.
All-Stars, two Hall of Famers.
Two great options.
Yeah.
Calgary, not so much. I think it's just Jerome McGinley.
Yeah, that's who I thought of too. But
Yeah.
again, honorable mention to Lanny McDonald.
Yep.
Was there with the cup. Honorable mention to Al McInnes.
Yep.
He was another name that came to mind. But I go with Jerome McGinley.
Yes, sir. In Carolina, I think of Ron Francis, although he had his best days in Hartford.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric Stahl is up there. Rod Brendamore is up there for me, but I had to go with Ron Francis.
See, if I went with Rod Brendamore, and I think it's more just because he's coaching them now too, because if it wasn't for him coaching, I probably would have gone with Eric Stahl. He was the best player on their cup run in 06.
Yep.
But my mind goes to Rod Brendamore when I
Cam
think of the
Ward.
Hurricanes. Honorable mention to Cam Ward.
Yes, Chicago's a tough one. We're both probably, in terms of hockey, that's our biggest fandom.
Yeah.
Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, we both passed on. I went with Stan Mikita.
I went with Stan Mikita too.
Yeah, the greatest Hawk, got them, I think, 3 cups.
Yep.
Something like that.
Taves and Kane got them the other 3.
Yeah, but
I go to Mikita first.
Yeah,
I think
he's
of that.
tops in games played, tops in points.
Yeah.
It's got to be Mikita. Colorado, though, is a little easier. I think of Joe Sakic.
So do I.
Patrick Waugh, Peter Forsberg are both great.
Even Ray Bork.
Yeah.
But I think of Joe Sakic, greatest Avalanche player of all time. You could even make the argument for McKinnon because he's playing up to that.
Yep.
And I think eventually it might be McKinnon
Yeah,
one day.
it might be McKinnon in the future. Columbus, with a little bit of a weaker history.
Yeah.
Easy for me to pick Rick Nash.
Yep, same here.
Now, someone to not overlook in terms of awards and stuff. Sergei Bobrovsky brought 2 Vezinas to Columbus, but it's still Rick Nash.
Kind of made them relevant again, too, in terms of a playoff team.
Yep. Dallas, I went with Mike Modano.
Yep, so did I.
I gave some thought to Brett Hull, especially with that Buffalo miscall.
Yeah, honorable mention to Brett Hall's foot. I almost went with Brett Hall's foot. Not Brett Hall, Brett Hall's foot. If you don't know what we're talking about, look up Brett Hall in the crease.
Yes, safe for work, though. Anyways.
Yeah.
Detroit was tough because I wanted to go with Lidstrom. I wanted to go with Yzerman, but I had to go with Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe.
Yeah. Yeah, I went with Gordie Howe as well.
Yeah.
I almost went Yzerman, but I had to go with Gordie Howe.
Yes, sir. Edmonton, Wayne Gretzky.
Yep. But I will say this. As the years go on, it's getting a little harder not to think of McDavid.
Yeah.
Because I think eventually he will be the second best player of all time. And
he has that potential.
He has that potential, and I think eventually it's going to get tough to think of Gretzky.
Yeah.
Nothing against Gretzky, but McDavid is
he's
really
great
good himself.
Yeah. Florida, very weak history in Florida. I thought of Barkov, I thought of Huberdeau, but the first one that came to mind was Roberto Luongo.
Same here.
Okay, I thought that was going to be a shocking pick.
No, honorable mention to Johnny Van Beesbrook.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go with Roberto Luongo here.
I love the guy.
Ed Jovanovski is a acceptable answer.
But yeah, he's probably one of the
Jokinen.
most overlooked goalies of all time.
Oh, for sure.
The Los Angeles Kings, he may not have gotten them a cup.
Yeah.
I think it was their greatest player in Marcel Dion.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of playing for the Kings, the greatest player that ever played for them was obviously Gretzky. But Marcel Dion, he's probably the greatest player to play in a Kings uniform.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't even go with any of them. This one's going to shock you.
Mm-hmm.
Dustin Brown.
No, that's not a bad pick. I believe he's second.
I thought you'd be a little more surprised by that one.
No, he was their captain for their 2 cups.
Exactly, and that's what
I think he's second in terms of games played. He's been with them since the mid-2000s.
Yeah, I just thought
drafted in 03. That's a great pick.
Yeah, I went Dustin Brown. When I think of the Kings, I think of Dustin Brown.
No, that's a good pick. Minnesota, I wanted to go with Marian Gaborik, but Mikko Koivu just played so many games for them.
Oh, okay.
I went with Koivu.
See, I went with Gaborik.
Okay.
Because I think he's the most skilled player to ever play for
the most exciting. Hopefully they can keep Kaprizov and he ends up that guy because they desperately need a star in Minnesota.
Yeah.
They're yet to have one.
Honorable mention to Dwayne Rollison.
Ryan Suter and Zach Parise also were guys that crossed my mind, but Montreal, tough.
This might be this was probably the hardest one. It's really hard to pick because such a storied franchise, so many Hall of Famers there.
Let's go into it before we announce our pick. So you talk about Bill Russell and his 11 rings for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
You have Henri Richard and his 11 rings for the Canadiens. You have Maurice Richard, who has his own trophy.
Yeah.
You have 3 great goaltenders in Ken Dryden, Patrick Waugh, and Jacques Plante.
Yeah.
Then you have 2 of their best captains in Jean Beliveau and Guy Lafleur.
Yeah.
Who do you pick?
You can't forget, you said the three goalies there. You can't forget Carey Price either. He's
tops for wins. So there's that too.
See, I went with Rocket Richard.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's just because the fact that there's a trophy named after him that we hear about year in and year out.
Yeah.
He's probably the greatest goal scorer for them. Arguably one of the greatest. He's one of the greatest goal scorers in NHL history.
Yep.
I think of because when I think of Maurice Richard, I think of the Canadiens. So I think it was only right to go when I think of the Canadiens, Maurice Richard, first name to come to mind.
Yeah. Well, my perspective on Montreal comes from my dad because that was his team growing up. And he saw Guy Lafleur and Ken Dryden play.
Yeah.
So it's between them for me, and I went with Guy Lafleur because that's his favorite player, and I think that's a reasonable pick. Leads them in points, and I believe he's up there for games played. So Guy Lafleur is my pick for Montreal.
See, if we were doing the Quebec Nordiques, I'd probably say Guy Lafleur.
Okay.
But in terms of the Canadiens, I went with Richard. But Guy Lafleur is a good pick too.
Yep. Nashville Predators. I originally had Pecorine.
Yeah.
But Shea Weber is one of my favorite all-time defensemen.
Yeah.
And he was definitely my favorite defenseman in Nashville. I hated when they traded him.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Shea Weber. Also, shout out Yossi and even David Legwand, their leading points guy. But
I went with Shea Weber too. My mind kind of crossed Jason Arnott for a second.
Okay.
But no, it was definitely the first name to come to mind was Shea Weber.
Yeah, I think of Arnott more as a devil.
Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of the Devils, I think this is another easy one. Scott Niedermayer's there, Scott Stevens there, but you got to go with Martin Brodeur.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Or Martin, sorry.
Yeah.
Now, the Islanders was tough because I feel Mike Bossy was the best player to ever play for them.
Yeah.
But Brian Trottier was their guy. Kind of like how Jonathan Toews is Chicago's guy, although Patrick Kane is probably the better forward.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who'd you go with?
I went with Mike Bossy.
Okay.
I think you could say Billy Smith there too.
Yep, Billy Smith was definitely up
Brian
there.
Trottier.
Yeah.
Great pick as well, but I went with Mike Bossy.
Yeah. And as long as the New York Rangers have been around, they don't have that rich of a history.
No.
So, again, that's no disrespect to Brian Leach, but he's my guy for them because there's just no one that stands out more. Honorable mention to Henrik Lundqvist.
Wow. I thought you were going to pick Messier. I went with Brian Leetch too.
Yeah.
And I thought that was going to be one of the more outlandish picks from here, but I went with Brian Leetch.
Because Messier he just kind of he went there, got a cup and dipped.
Yeah,
he kind of Kawhi'd them.
Yeah.
So
Lundqvist would be a good pick too, but I went with Brian Leetch.
Yeah, for me, when I think of logos, I think of guys who were there long term and an impact on the team, the franchise, and the city.
Yeah,
those are all important.
Mm-hmm.
In Ottawa, it should have been Erik Karlsson. Traded him away, injuries, and that. It's Daniel Alfredsson.
Yeah, it's the same for me here. Captain for years.
Yeah,
greatest senator of all time.
Yep.
Should be in the Hall of Fame, I will say, because there's a couple guys.
He'll get there.
There's a couple guys in the Hall of Fame that I don't think should be there, but they weren't as good as Daniel Alfredsson, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Philadelphia, I went with Bobby Clarke. I think that's an easy pick when you look at the guys in competition. Yeah, there's Lindros, there's Claude Giroux, but
he got their cups.
Yep, he got their cups. Pittsburgh, it was hard not to pick Sid, but Mario Lemieux saved this franchise twice.
I went with Sid.
Okay.
And Mario Lemieux would be a great pick, but I think Sid, like Mario Lemieux, I think he's played enough games now, and I think it could be that thing we talk about with McDavid and Gretzky. If McDavid continues to play for the Oilers at the rate he is, I think one of those things.
Where I didn't pick Sid is I feel it's too late for him to ever pass Mario Lemieux in terms of all time. It's too late. Like, Sid is in the decline now. It's just not going to happen at this point. Mario Lemieux, he went through injuries, but the guy's got under 1,000 games played, and he's still top 10 all time in points.
Yeah,
the guy's ridiculous. When him and Gretzky played at the same time, he was better than Gretzky. That's really the only argument you need. Yeah, Gretzky was on LA. He wasn't in his Edmonton.
Yeah,
he wasn't on that organization, but Lemieux is, I think, the top four solidified between whatever order you want. It's got to be Gretzky, Lemieux, and Howe.
Yeah, see, I go with Crosby when I think of them. Lemieux might be the better player, but I think of Crosby when I think of the Penguins.
Fair enough. San Jose, it's Joe Thornton for me.
Oh.
I don't know. I thought of Nabokov, I thought of Marleau, and even Pavelski, but I went with Joe Thornton.
See, I went with Mr. Shark himself, Patrick Marleau.
Okay.
Always finds his way back there.
Yeah.
He's all-time games played leader, I think, for them. So I go Patrick Marleau.
Yeah.
But yeah, Joe Thornton's a good pick. I almost thought of Owen Nolan there. And I think it was more for him pointing out the corner in the All-Star game that one time. And he was playing for the Sharks at the time. So, But no, Patrick Marleau.
Fair enough. St. Louis, Bernie Federko, maybe, but I went with Hull.
Okay.
One of the two in the Hall and Oates pairing.
Yep.
So, or Brett Hull, to be clear.
I went with Dale Hawerchuk.
Okay.
Who I like next to, like, maybe almost on par with Brett Hull, might be the greatest blue of all time.
Yep. Tampa Bay was a tough one because they're in a transition for me.
Yeah.
Right? Because up until now, I thought of Marty St. Louis.
Okay.
But after these playoffs, I had to change it to Nikita Kucherov. I think he's not only... I mean, you also can think of Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, and Vasilevsky.
Yeah.
But I think Kucherov is the guy.
See, I still think of Vinny Lecavalier. And I think it's because it was so outrageous.
I mean, he was their captain.
He was their captain, and it was so outrageous when they won that cup in 2004 that I always kind of remember that as kind of the first team that... Because then you saw it later with the Ducks winning it in 2007, Carolina winning it in 2006. You're seeing all these newer teams come out and win cups, and you hadn't seen that before.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the start of it, and I don't know. I still think of Vinny Lecavalier. Is he their best player of all time?
No,
by no means.
That's reasonable. That's like picking Jonathan Toews over Patrick Kane. That's totally reasonable.
Yeah.
Marty St. Louis was the better player, but Vinny Lecavalier was their captain, their leader. Toronto... There are two guys, Daryl Sittler, Matt Sundin. I think Matt Sundin's the greatest Leaf.
Yeah.
For now, I would hope Matthews can take that mantle. He should take that mantle. Whether or not he does is still TBD.
I went with Sundin as well.
Okay.
But again, Sittler would be a good pick. Even Matthews would be a half-decent pick.
Now, for Vancouver, I wanted to go with Pavel Bure because I didn't want to pick between these two guys, but I think it's fitting in this situation to pick Henrik and Daniel Sedin.
See, I went with specifically Henrik.
Okay.
No, I can't. I mean, I put Henrik Sedin down there just because I think he was the better one out of the two.
Yeah, he was.
But, I mean, they look identical. So when you think of one, you have to think of the other one.
Yeah.
But specifically Henrik Sedin.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Daniel.
For Vegas, I went with Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah.
It's the end of an era for me after trading him to Chicago. Disappointing to see them continuing to trade away from the team that got them to the finals. But they got to do what they got to do, I guess.
I think of Fleury as well.
Yeah. Washington, easy. Alex Ovechkin, sporting his jersey. Greatest cap of all time, an icon.
Yeah.
Arguably. They weren't in talks to be moved, but he definitely made them relevant.
Yeah.
Winnipeg was another tough one. I think Kovalchuk was the best to play in that organization, although he was a Thrasher.
Yeah.
Wheeler's their captain and leader, but I went with Mark Scheifele.
Yeah, I went with... I didn't go with Scheifele. I went with, actually, Winnipeg. I went with Patrick Laine, actually. And I think it's just recency bias with all the drama that went on with him being there. And the fact that they weren't supposed to pick at number 2.
Yeah.
But they jumped up from 14th to pick at 2.
Yeah.
Had the worst odds to get into the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
They did. I don't know. And I think it's just the whole... He's still in the news, too, because there's issues with him and Tortorella.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think of Laine...
For toxic reasons.
Yeah. It's really... He was polarizing. He was a polarizing guy that...
That's like taking Lindros over Bobby Clark. That's reasonable because I thought of Lindros for Philadelphia. If we go back to that pick. Bonus, Seattle. I
made a pick for Seattle.
Okay, I didn't.
Yeah.
But go ahead with yours.
I went with Jamie Alexiak.
Okay.
And I think it's just because we're coming off the Olympics too.
Yeah.
His sister is absolutely fantastic. A fantastic swimmer.
Yeah.
Had a big showing at this Olympics. And obviously the expansion draft just happened too. He was one of the guys featured there.
Yeah.
I went with Alexiak. Honorable mention to Carey Price. Because I almost went with Carey Price there, but I just kept thinking Alexiak. I go with Jamie Alexiak.
I mean, Carey Price, to be clear, is not a Seattle Kraken. For those who don't know, it's just that he should be. They definitely took an L there. I mean, I understand saving $10.5 million. My pick is Mark Giordano, probably going to be their captain.
Yeah.
He may not be their best player coming out in year 1, but we'll see how that all plays out.
And I have a little surprise here.
Okay.
I was talking about this with my dad yesterday. Told him that we were filming something like this. Him and I were rifling off some of who we thought when we thought of these teams. And he brought up the Minnesota North Stars. And the first person to come to mind for me, Mario Lemieux. And it's because of him absolutely splitting the defense and dangling those two guys. There's a statue outside of PPG Paints Arena of him absolutely dummying these two North Stars defensemen.
Yeah.
But I thought that one was kind of funny. No real disrespect to guys like Dino Ciccarelli, but for some reason when I think of the North Stars, I think of that play where they got absolutely dismantled by Mario Lemieux and his sheer greatness.
Yeah, and then I guess if we're going back to Ottawa, let's put Chris Kunitz as the guy who dismantled their franchise.
You can put the referees in there too. It was a some questionable calls that series, I'll say that.
There's questionable calls in every series. If we're going to cut this out, but if you look back at the Vegas-Montreal series, they really wanted Vegas to advance. Yeah. Look back at all the calls. Like, they really did not want Montreal in the finals. But
with that, that'll do it for our NHL Team Association video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. And so you don't miss our NBA Team Association video. Same type of thing. We just do it with NBA teams. That's coming out soon, so stay tuned for that. And comment down below who you think of when you think of each hockey team. And that'll do it. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.